Welcome back to Drafting with Mark, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Coil command versus the Helix command. So if either one of those two commands interest you, please stay tuned for this video. Now remember that the Coil command is going to be in Inventor and it incorporates a Helix with it. Whereas if we do this in AutoCAD, we have to create the Helix command and then do the sweep. So Inventor does this a little bit quicker and easier for you. Now this video is going to be broken up into two parts. First half, we're going to deal with this in Inventor, and then the second half of this video, we're going to take a look at it in AutoCAD, and at the end, we're going to compare the two and see which one are easier. All right, so stick around to the end. Let's get started. So here in Inventor, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the New button, and this part is going to be created in inches. So the template that I'm going to do is make sure I select the inches, or English, and then I'm going to select the standard inch IPT. So I'm just going to double click on that, and as usual, we're going to sit back and wait for Inventor to load up. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to create the cutter profile, and the way I'm going to do that is just going to select the Start 2D Sketch, and then it should be asking you for a plane. I'm going to select the XY plane, and once it rotates around, then I'll start getting ready to create my cutter profile. That cutter profile is going to be that image in the lower left corner, in the lower right corner, which is located here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create this shape that's in bold. So that's going to be the first thing we're going to create. Now keep in mind that this thing is going to be incredibly small. So some of the first things I'm going to do is just kind of create that shape, right? I'm going to draw a line, and of course I'm going to make it as big as I can. All right, so I'm just going to kind of create a sketch here, and one of the things I do like about Inventor is that I don't have to be too accurate here in the beginning, meaning that you can see that I overshot this one, but a coincidence constraint will go ahead and correct that problem for us. Okay. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a horizontal line. And what this line is going to represent is going to keep this part symmetric to each other, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to coincidence. I'm going to select this endpoint and put it on that midpoint. And I'll do the same on the back end. I'm going to select this endpoint and go find the green dot on this line here and put it on that one. So what I did was I just kept these two lines symmetrical to each other. All right. Let's go ahead and put our angle dimension on here. So I'm just going to do a dimension on this line and this one. Let's go ahead and make that angle 60. And now we're ready to put some of these other numbers on here. Let's go ahead and put the horizontal dimension. So I'll click here, and this is going to be a small number, so 0.0325. All right, I'm going to kind of zoom in because I expected that part to shrink down. I'm going to go ahead and put the front number here on, which is 0.0062. All right, and I think that's everything that we're going to need to create this. The last thing I need to do is define where to put this at in reference to my cylinder. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to kind of shrink in my dimensions here. And then once I do that, I'm going to put a dimension from this edge to this point here. So let's go ahead and draw a line. Sorry, let's go ahead and put a dimension. We don't need to create a line there. Let's go ahead and put a dimension from here to here. And we know that our diameter of our overall part is 0.25, right? So let's just go ahead and put in 0.125. That's going to be the radius of that, all right? So here's the cutter profile that I'm going to need to create, all right? Now, I could have drawn this at any point in time or created my cylinder first, which is normally what most people would have did. But the Inventor part gives me the option to do things kind of a little bit out of order. And you're going to see what I mean by that here in a second. All right, let me go ahead and move this down, right? The overall length of our part is 1. So I'm just going to move this down half of that. So I'm just going to go back to my dimension, select this midpoint here again, select that horizontal line there, click here. And I'm going to make this number bigger than 1. I always like to keep mine somewhere around 1.5 just because I want that thread to start a little bit earlier than what I need it to do, right? So now I have all of my dimensions on here. Let's do one other thing. this line here. Let's go ahead and select it, and let's make it construction. All right, so there's my cutter profile. Let's go ahead and finish this sketch. And now I'm not going to do anything with that, right? This is all created and everything is nice and happy. I'm just going to hide this. So I'm going to select here, right click on it, and turn this off for a second. Now it's still there, I just can't see it. Let's go ahead and create another 2D sketch. This time I'm going to place it right on the XZ plane. Once I do that, I'm just going to create a circle. I'm going to click here. The diameter of this circle, so you can see mine is reading radius right now. I'm just going to do one right click, and then I'm going to tell it diameter. Now I'm going to type in the diameter of my circle, which is 0.25. Go ahead and hit enter. Let's go ahead and finish this sketch. Now we're going to go ahead and extrude this shape, right? So this is going to be the height that I need for my stud here that I'm creating. So it's a all thread or some of that nature is what I hear most people calling it. But this thing is 1 inch tall, right? It's a symmetrical value, so therefore I'm going to select here. And now you see that that is 1 inch. Go ahead and hit the OK button. Let's do one other thing. Let's go ahead and put those chamfers on the end of this. So let's use the chamfer command, which is located here. I'm going to give it its distance, which is going to be 0.0313. All right. I'll select the edges, so that top edge and the bottom edge. And then I'll go to OK. So I created my stud. Now I need to go ahead and put the threads on this. So now we already did that part. So let's go ahead and bring our sketch back on. I'm just going to right click on it. And then I'm going to go to visibility and I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to take a look at this on the front view here. And you can see that here's my thread way down here at the bottom. Now I can adjust these numbers. You can see that that's really far. And I actually meant to make that number 0.75. But in my case, that's easy enough to do. I can double click on that dimension without actually going into that sketch and type in 0.75, and that should move my part up. All right, so now I have everything that I need to go ahead and create the coil on this one. So let's go to Coil. It's going to ask me for the profile, and it already found the one profile that I have. The axis that I need, and this is why it's so important that you create these shapes right around your axis and your planes here. So you can see that I'm going to need the y-axis. So I'm going to select the y-axis here. Now you can see the coil starting to develop. Next thing I need to do is decide what method do I have. According to the drawing, I do have the total length of this thing. So I have the total height. And here I have a number that's situated at 0.050. And that's going to be my pitch. So the two numbers that I do have is I have a length and a pitch. Okay, so here underneath method, I do have an overall height and I have a pitch. So I'm going to select it in the drop down and I'm going to tell it that I have the pitch and the height. Once I select here, I'm going to go ahead and specify the pitch, which is 0.05. And then the height of this, I'm going to make it a little bit taller than what I wanted. So just 1.5 is fine. And then under the selection options, I'm going to tell it to cut. Once I hit the OK button, you should see that coil start to happen and your thread is created. All right. So that's going to be everything that you need to do if you're creating this in Inventor. Now let's jump over to AutoCAD and see how we can create this same part. Okay, so here in AutoCAD, let's go ahead and switch over to 3D drafting. And the way that I'm going to do that is by coming down to the little sprocket or gear here, select the fly up next to it. And here I'm going to select the 3D modeling. We're going to give it a second, and now you should wait, and you should see your ribbon change at the top, and you should get a couple of other things that should be happening. Let's go ahead and close this window here. All right, so kind of like I did when I was in Inventor, I'm going to go ahead and create this cutter first, right? So first thing I'm going to do is let's go ahead and get rid of this grid since I never ever use it. Remember, you can hit F7 on your keyboard to get rid of it, or you can come down here to the bottom and select this icon here. So either one of those is going to get rid of that grid for you. All right, I'm just going to create a line, and if you're not familiar or you like to use the ribbons at the top, I will show you where they are, but it's always a lot simpler in AutoCAD. Just hit L and hit enter. But the line command is located here. I'm going to select that. I'll click my first point. I am going to turn the ortho on, so I'm just going to come down here and select ortho, or you can hit F8 on your keyboard. Let's go ahead and do that. and I want to make a vertical line that has a distance of 0.0062. Alright, now that line will be small. Let me go ahead and hit escape. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom the extents by selecting this icon here, and it should zoom right into that line. Next thing I'm going to do is create a line from this endpoint going out this direction. Now it really doesn't matter the length of this line, so I'm just going to kind of drag it out. Next, I'm going to rotate this line, so I'm just going to pre-select it first. I'll select this line here. Then I'll go to the rotate command, and remember the rotate command is going to be underneath our modifying options. So rotate, it's already selected, so I'm reading on the command line. It says select the base point, select that endpoint, and then I'm going to type in 30. So I'm going to rotate that line up 30 degrees. Let's zoom out a little bit. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror this, so I'm going to mirror this across. So I'm going to select the line, and the mirror command should be underneath the modify drop down here. And I'm looking for the one that looks like the little TP. And this is why sometimes it's a lot easier to type in the commands. And it should be this one here. So I'm going to go to mirror. I already have that line pre-selected. I'm just going to select this midpoint. And if you don't have midpoint turned on, make sure you select the fly up next to it and put a check next to midpoint. So I'm going to select this midpoint by left clicking on it. As long as I drag this direction, and remember I have my ortho on, so that makes things a lot easier. So I'm just going to left click here. Go ahead and hit enter. Let's use the offset command. So I'm going to offset. I'll type in the distance of 0.0325. Select this front vertical line and then click it to the right. Next, I'm going to take a look at the fillet command. So I'm going to escape out of that one. Go to fillet. My radius should be already set to 0, but I'll verify that here. So it is 0. I'll go ahead and hit enter. I'm going to use the multiple option. Then I'm going to select this line with this line. And do the same at the bottom. So this line again, and then this line. Alright, I'm going to zoom out. Go ahead and hit escape. Highlight this. And then I'm going to use the join option. So join is going to be right underneath the modify again. And it's going to be the one with the two arrows facing toward each other. So now this is all joined. I'm just going to kind of put this in an isometric view by selecting this kind of icon of the lower left corner of my view cube here. Zoom out a little bit more. Let's go ahead and place a circle that has a diameter. So circle, center diameter. I'll click here. And I always kind of drag out to preview my circle. And this one has a diameter of 0.25. Next thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and move this from this back midpoint to that quadrant, right? So let's go to move. Go ahead and select your cutter profile here. Enter. Select the midpoint on the back of this line, and I'm going to take it to this quadrant. Once again, remember that if quadrant is not turned on, it's one of my running O snaps here. So that's why it's highlighting for me. Alright, so I'm going to select that quadrant and place it there. Alright, now I'm going to kind of leave this for now, and let's go ahead and create some of the other stuff, right? So I'm just going to make a copy of this circle. And we're going to use the copy command. I want to just select this circle only. I pick the base point, can be kind of somewhere out here. I just want to create a copy of it just above it, right? So I'm just going to drag this up. You'll notice next to my cursor it has a positive Z. So I'm going up in the Z direction, and this is because my ortho is on and I'm aiming up. So I'm just going to drag this up, and let's call it 0.5 up in the Z direction. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and extrude. Select that circle I just copied. Enter. Let's go up in the up direction and give it the height of 1. Kind of zoom this into my screen here. Let's go ahead and put a chamfer on that. So I'm going to select on the solid tab and go to chamfer. I'll select distance. Type in the distance, which is 0.0313. Enter. It's going to be the exact same number as my first distance. So I'm just going to type that number again. So 0.0313. And now I'm going to select these two endpoints. Sorry, these two edges. And select those two edges. Go ahead and hit enter. And one more enter. So it just kind of gives me a little verification at first. Alright, so now I want to rotate this thing to spin it up in order to start my helix and to cut out my profile here. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I have to switch out of a 2D wireframe. Let me go back to the home screen because I want these gizmos to work. So the way that I have to do this is I'm going to select where it says 2D wireframe, and I'm just going to go down to a regular wireframe. Alright, next I'm able now to select my cutter profile, and you can see right now it's selecting as a move gizmo. If I come down and I switch it to a rotate gizmo, it should switch. I'm going to select the red axis, and then I'm going to type in 90. Alright, escape. That's going to be all I need to create my helix. Now I need to draw the helix, which is underneath the draw. Hit helix. It's going to ask me for the center. It's going to be at the center of this circle, so I'm going to click here. And then I have to tell it where it's going to start at. What I usually like to do is go and click that exact same quadrant that I placed the back of my cutter profile on. So I'll select that midpoint. Next is going to kind of want to do a spiral, right? I don't want a spiral in this case, so I'm just going to hit enter. And now I need to tell it where that helix is going to go. This time I'm going to give it a turn height, and this is another fancy way for saying pitch. So I'm going to click turn height. I'll type in 0.050, enter. Let me zoom out a little bit. And then I want this thing to spin up past it. So I'm kind of looking at my screen here, and I see that 1.75 is roughly past it. So I'm just going to give it a number 2. Alright. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and erase this bottom line. So I'm going to select that and hit delete. Let's go ahead and use the sweep command next. So I'm going to go to sweep. I'm going to select the cutter profile first. Enter. And then I'm going to select the path, which is going to be my helix. So I'm going to select that. And this is one of those things, depending on how fast or slow your machine is, it's going to create that. So you can imagine that that cutter profile is just following that helix around. So in some cases, it may take a little bit for it to kick through. And in other cases, it'll go through kind of quickly. But I'm just going to give it a second here, and it should be done here. All right. And I'm still kind of waiting on it. And while I'm taking this time, hopefully you can kind of, if you like seeing videos of this nature, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button, or either tell me something that you want to see me do. I like creating stuff of this nature in 3D as well as in 2D. So this kind of stuff really amazes me. All right, now you can see that my sweep is done. Let's go ahead and take a cut of this, right? So I'm going to use the subtract. And then what I'm going to do is I'm kind of looking through this to see that cylinder. I can see a line off of that cylinder. And that's what I'm going to select. So I'm going to select that line. Enter. So I'm going to always select the object I want to keep first. Let's zoom out a little bit more. And now I can select this sweep that I just created. And once I hit enter, it should subtract that from it and make the threads, right? I'm just going to go ahead and click on this picture on the view cube and go to front. And let's go ahead and change the view of it to shades of gray. All right. So now you see that that thread is actually fully cut around there. So now you can see how to use both of these commands depending on which way or which program you're going to use. You can see the coil is a little bit more simple, and you can see that Inventor that it's a little bit more user friendly, but I can do the exact same thing in AutoCAD. It just takes a few more steps to set it up. All right. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you once again, if you like this kind of content or you enjoy it, please consider subscribing or liking these videos. And until the next time, or I come up with something more interesting to draft, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.